Welcome to Headlocks, Heels, and Havoc, the wildest mixed tag team in podcasting where the kayfabe drops and the chaos takes over. Let's ring the damn bell.
Headlock tight, heels on the prowl, dropping elbows, hearing growl, feel the foul. No script here, just real, no bluff. Kayfabe crack, now the dirt gets rough. Headlocks, heels, havoc in the zone. Stepping in the ring, chaos at your home. No filters, no mask, just raw bare tone. Wrestling unscripted, we on the throne. Title belts, mic checks, crowd going crazy. Drop truth bombs, leaving lines feeling hazy. Beyond the kayfabe, past the charade, where legends are born and stories get made. Headlocks popping, who's hitting the mat? Welcome to the havoc where the real talk's at. Tune in, step through, leave the fake at the door. Headlocks, heels, havoc, now hear the roar.
Welcome to the show, everybody. It is Headlocks, Heels, and Havoc, Wrestling Unscripted. I am one of your hosts, the triple threat of podcast announced teams, I guess you could call us. The legend, J Mac. As always, I'm accompanied by Uncle Slam.
What's up, what's up?
And the first lady of Wrestling Podcast, the Vipress.
Hi, you guys.
Today, I believe we are going to tackle the conversation of the progression of wrestling just in our lifetimes, not necessarily since it started, because, Lord, we could go back to the 1800s.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to do it from just, what we've observed in our lifetimes, what's changed, what's gotten better, what's gotten worse, the goods, the bads, the pros, the cons. So, I guess just come along for the ride and welcome, guys.
Welcome.
So, Josh, what are your first real memories of wrestling and how wrestling was whenever you were a kid and stuff and everything? What's different from then, till now?
Well, obviously times have changed. I'm going to show my age a little bit. I'm about 45 years old. So, I started watching wrestling in the 80s. I'm an 80s baby or whatever. Wrestling then, as a child, of course, I believe everything was real.
Right.
I think my first real memory of wrestling was Saturday Night Main Event.
Classics.
Probably watching Hogan. I think maybe was it the Macho Man? But yeah, Saturday Night's Main Event was probably my first real introduction. And then, of course, watching the Rockin' Wrestlers as a kid or whatever, the cartoon.
Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestlers.
Yes. Love that. But wrestling is it's completely evolved. It's pretty much changed like I have. It's grown, it's matured, it's had good times, it's had bad times. Obviously, to me, the 80s and the 90s are going to be my golden eras. I mean, my introduction was in the 80s. You had Hulk Hogan, Macho Man, Roddy Piper, Jimmy Fly Snuka, just to name a few or whatever. I mean, those were, some of my favorites. I mean, those are the ones that got me into it. I mean, Ultimate Warrior.
I mean, what kid didn't like the Ultimate Warrior, Then we became adults and realized what he was really doing, and it didn't make any sense at all. It was cool then,
but it didn't have to make sense then. Like
right.
I said, I mean that beat started going, and the
yeah.
Tell me you wasn't over there fist pumping, getting
all
hyped
I'm
up.
going to say is the very first SummerSlam when that man came out against the Honky Tonk Man
Running
as the replacement for Brutus Beefcake, I lost my shit.
Running.
I know I jumped a good 5 feet off my couch, just straight up. And I'm telling you, people, I'm as pale white as it comes. But that day, I probably could have dunked the basketball. I was jumping so high. It was crazy. I was so hyped. Because it was just, the war, yeah. So I know what you mean. That energy gets into you and stuff and everything. That's what got me.
And obviously, you can't talk 80s wrestling without talking Hulk Hogan, Hulkamania. I mean, it
Oh,
was.
right.
I mean, it was a pop culture
Took over the
phenomenon.
world.
I mean, it was everywhere. I mean, he was in movies. He was on, TV. I mean, I'm surprised he wasn't making albums. Maybe he was.
If I'm not mistaken,
I think he does.
They did.
I think he has at
the
least one.
Yes, the WWF made an album on
Yeah.
there. I can't.
I really think it's a thing.
I want to find that video because it's like all of them at a construction site.
Oh, God.
And like, the Junkyard Dogs in it, everybody. It was pretty much all the rock and wrestling guys
Yeah,
and
yeah,
everything. And I remember when they did that.
That's
That was
too much.
hilarious. Now that you said, because I can see Hogan on the cover of the album, and he's just got like a big white construction hat on, and he's kind of got like a snarl on his face and everything.
Like the Village People.
Right.
All I can see is like the wrestling Village People.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
goodness.
me. Like that's really what got me started was the whole Hulkamania fad.
Yeah.
Was as soon as I'm trying to think, if I'm not mistaken, I want to say the very first match I ever watched was like you. It was a Saturday night's main event, but it was Hogan and Paul Orndorff. And I think the reason it got me hooked in wrestling so much was because it was one of the classic endings in all of wrestling history where they both climbed out of the cage at the same time. And I mean, you really couldn't have timed it better for them to have hit the floor at the same time. And they had done all this replay. There was controversy. Everybody's waiting around to see who wins. And of course, the Hulkster got there about a tenth of a second just before Orndorff did, But I mean, when all that was going on and just the wonder of, oh my gosh, is he going to lose? Is he going to win? Is there going to be a new champion and everything? It just suckered me in. And then, of course, the whole Hulkamania run, I was sold. I was taking my prayer or saying saying vitamins and taking prayers.
Yeah.
That's what I was doing. But no, I was hooked. And then I wasn't really much of an NWA guy. I would catch it every now and then. I'd see Flair and stuff and everything. Didn't really understand why Flair had a belt around his waist calling himself world champion. He wasn't Hulk Hogan. You know what I'm saying? But later on, as I got into like WCW and, the NWA merging into WCW, that's about the time I got into it and everything. It just, like you said, I don't know. I don't know what really suckered me in other than the excitement, but just, like you said, it evolved. The stories just started sinking in better. There was a lull there during the early 90s when, let's just be honest, wrestling sucked.
Mm-hmm.
There was just nothing going on that was any good. There were good performers like the Bret Harts, Shawn Michaels, and all those in the new era, and, also across the other promotions, but there were no stories that were standing out. There were no Hulk Hogans anymore.
Well, you know why? I mean, a big part of that was because the big, of course, the '80s was, one of the, the beginning of it and one of the great times. But then the whole steroid era came in and kind of all the big guys and all the superstars and the big people kind of, fell to a wayside because they were connected with steroids like Hogan, and plus we all know Hogan testified against Vince on Congress, I'm pretty sure, or in court or whatever. So that's what made the Bret Harts and the Shawn Michaels more popular, because they were more realistic and stuff or whatever, or they, that was their time to shine because they had to move away from the big guys, the bulky guys, because of the whole steroids.
And, I didn't know either. I just watched it the other day. I didn't know that Hogan threw, like, superstar Billy Graham under the bus on the Arsenio Hall show. Like, if you go back
done
and...
a lot of crazy
Yeah,
stuff,
like,
actually.
and see, that's another thing. Like, that's a whole other show,
That's
too.
a whole
is
show.
like
Yeah, there's whole
Hogan
YouTube
himself.
videos, I think,
Yeah.
for about Hogan lying about stuff.
We got a
so.
special intro song for that show.
Or him just doing whatever he wants to.
Goes along the same beat as Real American, too. But no, I'll have to let you in on that joke, Carrie. I don't know if you've ever seen the video, but there's a video out there that somebody edited of Hulk Hogan's intro music, "The Real American."
Yeah.
I'll have to let you in on
Yeah.
that. You know,
I don't think I've seen that one.
another time. But yeah, getting back to what I was saying, yeah, Hogan threw him like I remember Hogan appearing on Arsenio Hall that show. And I remember watching it as a kid and everything, and I never thought anything about it because it was Hulk Hogan, and it was my hero, and, you know, he had to be telling the truth.
Right.
Well, man, come find out where we all fooled. But, you know, at the end of the day, you got to be able to separate the people with the characters and stuff.
Right.
So I'd like to say that I was a character Hulk Hogan fan more than a Terry Bollea fan. But, yeah, it just kind of threw me for a loop because he said something to the effect of, like, I was watching it the other day. He said something like, I never took steroids, but there was a guy named Superstar Billy Graham who done it all the time. I'm not, you know, I'm paraphrasing his quote. But, yeah, it was crazy. Like, he didn't say, you know, the locker room. He said him.
A specific
Yeah, he
person,
named the
that's-
name. Yeah.
So I mean, you know, like you said, you know, with that hurting did it? But that's the question: did it hurt, or was it just time to progress and get rid of the big, bulky bodybuilders and go to the Shawn Michaels, the Bret Harts, the Stone Colds, you know, the 230-pound heavyweights and not the 350-pound heavyweights.
Well, obviously steroids are not good for you. So, I mean, getting people off those probably was good for the business in the long run because that's
All
definitely
the
not a good
different
look.
complications
And,
that
you
come
know,
with it.
exactly.
Yep.
I mean, you've seen it. We've all seen it throughout.
But I think it is. I think in the long run, it definitely helped it. In the short run, you know, they lost a little bit. But like I said, it gave other people a opportunity that may have not been able to, like you said, like the Shawn Michaels, like the Bret Hart. Now, like you still had a couple big guys like the Undertaker, you know, who was still around or whatever. But for the most part, you know, that was when Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels' big title run. That was when their feud or whatever.
Yeah, but Taker was never like a bodybuilder, big guy. He was just a big guy.
Yeah, tall
you know
guy,
what I'm saying?
yeah.
He was just 300 pounds of just mass. So, okay, now that we're in kind of like the Vipers' era of wrestling,
That's fine.
so like, what's your kind of take on the progression since you've been watching?
It's been really up and down since I started. I didn't start watching until like the early 2000s. I was probably 14. I'm 37 now, so about 20, a little over 20 years that I've been watching it. And just in the last 20-some years, it's been extremely crazy. It's like a roller coaster. Came into it like when John Cena was in his Thugonomics.
Ruthless
Aggression era
yeah.
type thing, like before he became "you can't see me" thing. So I mean, but to see it, like I've seen it at its lowest,
Godforsaken PG
and
era.
now at the point, through the PG era.
Been there too.
See, that's why I encouraged you to go back and watch those like '90s Raws
And
and
I
the
did.
'90s Nitros,
Mm-hmm.
and watch them, you know, week to week,
Just the
and
difference.
see why we were, you know, it was like, okay, this match is kind of dull. We're gonna switch over to Nitro real quick. See
Yeah.
what's going on over there. Oh crap, Kevin Nash's out there talking. NWO's talking. You know, it
Right.
was just, it was great. Go, sorry, I didn't
No,
mean to
you're
interrupt.
fine.
But that's
Like,
why I encouraged that.
yeah, no, I get that because like even with that, you could see how different it is. Even to now, like now, it's even more different than it was even 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Like now, it's so different, especially with Triple H now running everything.
I think they're trying to get back to I don't want to call it an attitude era, but
Yeah.
a slight attitude era.
I think a nice balance, like I say, because they still want to keep the the family friendly with the PGs and be able to sell,
But you also want to like
be able to
incorporate
keep the
adults
young,
into that.
like the 18 to 21-year-old guys like they had during, of
Right.
course, the Attitude Era. Or whatever.
Kids are buying the merchandise, and
Yeah.
kids don't have money.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so you got to be able to keep the parents there with a little bit of entertainment. For
Absolutely.
them. You got to be able to keep the
You
kids
got
there
to.
too.
You got to cater to everybody.
Yep.
That's another reason why, like, even like the women's wrestling, like me being a woman myself, I specifically look at the women's division through all of it, and it just the incredible leaps and bounds that the women's division has
Oh,
made over
yeah.
the years. Like, I mean, just in like the late '90s, they were like sexualized beyond belief, which they're sexualized somewhat now, but I mean, what isn't in nowadays?
Right.
But then you had like panties and bra matches, and it wasn't about
Lingerie
the action.
matches. And,
Right.
Yeah.
But see, this is my thing that I've always wondered is like, and I get it. It's the intent behind it with the sexualization of the women, but if you think about it, the men are really just as sexualized because
Absolutely.
they're running around in underwear.
Absolutely.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I mean, both of them are
Mhm.
sexualized for the. You're not again the steroids. Vince McMahon wasn't sending 600-pound fat guys out there, except for every now and then, to beat up the little muscular guy.
Yeah.
Because the little muscular guy was the one that was going to make the women pay for their ticket. The
Ab-
Shawn Michaels,
Mhm.
those guys.
Yep. Absolutely.
So the sexualization of them of both
Yeah.
sides has always been.
But, like, if you-
unfortunately, it's been
Yeah.
a little bit more.
Women
not
have
just
been, like, put down on
sexualization
it.
of women.
But wrestling's main fan base has always been men, so
Yes.
you have to cater to your audience, and that's what
That's
kind
very
of
true,
drew
too.
more
Right.
men in. But now they've seen that they don't have to be just sex objects; they can also be athletes
Athletic.
Yes.
who can perform and
And are nowadays
Headline the main
outperforming
event.
the men.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I agree. That's a point I was going to raise, especially with talking about the progression of the women part, is it's really gotten to the point to where, and it's no offense to Trish and Lita or any of them or anything, because they were trying to learn on the fly, because nobody was really serious about
Right.
training the women back
Right.
then.
Yeah.
They would show them some things and this, that, and the other. There were a few wrestlers who would, help and everything,
Right.
but they also had their stuff they had to worry about too. They couldn't just stop and start training somebody. So, they took the initiative to stop
Actually try to do something.
Right. I don't want to be just, shaking my butt on TV in my bra and panties match. I want to go out there and actually compete for the women's championship and have a good match. And that, yes, they put the time and effort in to learn it. I'm not knocking them. The matches weren't great.
No.
They
Not like they are now.
No, the timing of those
phenomenal
matches was not great. The women now, I'll sit and watch a women's match as much as I'll watch any man's match because they throw it down
Just as hard as
Yes.
the men sometimes,
They
if
do.
not harder.
yes.
I've seen some women matches that outrank some of the men matches
Yes.
by far.
Oh, big time.
By
Big
far.
time. Like, what was it? Who was it? I
But
want
the
to say
main
it was
event
Rhea
at-
Ripley and Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
was a great
That was a
match.
really good match.
And I want to say they had a 2-match series, didn't they, so far? Rhea won one and Charlotte won one. I mean, anyways, it doesn't matter for the
Yeah.
what we're talking about. But yeah, I mean that match right there, I would
Yeah.
I would watch that over just about I'd watch it over Disco Inferno any day. And hey, if he hears this and he wants to shout it out from his podcast, we appreciate that attention.
Absolutely. It's just the whole thing is it's just crazy to see how different it was from like whenever we all first started watching it to where it is now,
Oh
and how it was big at one point in time, then it kind of like went away, and then now it's becoming this really big thing again. Like, I mean, it's literally everywhere. It is everywhere. you
It's
have
a global
title belts
phenom,
that
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
represent different things.
I mean, Saudi
now.
Arabia matches,
Yes.
Australia,
Massive
Well,
in
I
Saudi
mean,
Arabia.
Brazil.
And even going back further, think about this. Like, I was looking up everything. Like, it's just crazy to think that this started out as a carnival sideshow.
Yeah.
It was literally just something that people, it was a show that people would show up in your town. They'd challenge somebody to wrestle them, because there was like, what was it? There was two main styles. There was catch wrestling and Greco-Roman. And then it just, I can't remember who the two guys were, but one was Carl Gotch, I think. But they ended up meeting and they ended up wrestling for like 12 hours or some crap like that. Yeah, I'm not even joking. And when they
Why?
He
The
said
question,
why?
why?
to determine the first world champion.
Oh.
Because one was
Okay.
the catch wrestling champion, one was the Greco-Roman.
So they were like literally
They were
wrestling.
literally
No
wrestling.
storyline
Like,
involved.
yeah,
nothing like
yeah,
that.
well, yeah.
It wasn't like
storyline
fixed,
back then.
a
and stuff.
fixed ending.
I don't. As far as I know, no.
Oh,
You
well,
know
that's
what I'm
why
saying?
they were wrestling for so long.
But,
So, like, who won?
Who was?
That's what I need to know.
Let
I
me
mean,
see
you can't
if
just
I-
tell us all that and not tell us if you wrestle for 12 hours, man. I got to know who won. And
I'm not sure. I had never even
I
heard of
got.
that.
I'll
Because,
look it up.
I mean,
'cause
wrestling has been a thing for humans since the dawn of time. I mean, people fight. It's just in us. So, it just.
But yeah, like 12 hours.
Who was considered the first professional wrestling champion between the catch wrestling champion and the Greco-Roman wrestling champion? The first widely recognized professional wrestling champion encompassing both catch wrestling and Greco-Roman wrestling was George Hackenschmidt. He won the world championship in 1905. No, that's not him.
I was
That's
going to
not
say,
it.
is this the precursor to the professional wrestling that we're talking about now, or what?
Let me look this up. History of professional wrestling. That's how I looked it up. Let's see. Emerging in the form of two styles of regulated competitive sport, freestyle and Greco-Roman wrestling, based on British and continental traditional, respectively, summarized under the terms amateur wrestling. By the beginning of the modern Olympics in 1896, the separation of work, i.e. purely, that's not what I'm looking for. Here
The
we go.
legend's going way back here. Like,
Yes.
about the farthest I go back is, maybe 1950, with territories and stuff like that, when it was regional, and then
I
Vince
feel like
McMahon
it was
Sr.
sooner than that, like in the 20s.
But, like, you're going back to the beginning.
It says the popularity declined during World War II, but was revived. That's not it.
Yeah, because they were wrestling in boxing while when wars were happening too, because that was their entertainment.
Yeah, but when did it go from, like, actual real fighting to what we have now?
Who did the professional wrestler Carl Gotch wrestle to become the world champion? That's not it either. I will have to dig to find this because I had it the other day and it's making me mad now.
That's all we're gonna think about.
I know. It's really bothering me.
Next time you
now.
got to save the page.
I know.
That's what I do.
I gotta be better. This is bothering me bad. Origin. I will find it and get the information because it was in the 18.
Well, that's interesting. Just
Yeah,
the
they
fact of knowing
wrestled
that
for like
somebody
a
they wrestled for that long.
time. It was like hours upon hours. I don't want to swear it was 12 hours, but it was like around 12 hours.
Now, was this in America, or, like, is this like a world championship, or is this just like,
It was considered the first world championship, which the lineage of the NWA is off of.
So, like his kid, or, like his grandpa or something like that, basically.
Yeah, it's crazy. But wrestling is so much different. Like I said, it started out as and you were talking about it started out as a carnival sideshow, and now we're sitting here having multi-billion-dollar shows in Saudi Arabia, and it's just, it's
Sells out stadiums. I think the first WrestleMania was like 20,000 people with like pay-per-view of like a million, which was massive back then. And now I think the last WrestleMania had how many people?
It was 170 something for both days.
And then pay-per-view probably was what? I'd say
They're running about 70 to 80 per pay-per-view.
I mean, people did it sell.
Except for overseas. Overseas, they're squeezing about 100 or so.
So
and those are just seats.
Yeah, so we're talking easily, $1 billion, because you got to factor in, that's just WrestleMania, and then you got to factor in, the other four, the big four. You got the Royal Rumble, you got SummerSlam, you got Survivor Series,
and that's just WWE. Like, we also have AEW. There's TNA. There's OVW. I mean, there's so many different.
And who would have ever thought you would? I remember as a kid being like, okay, well, I remember the first 3 or 4 WrestleManias. I was just like, I hope to God they show it on HBO or something, because we didn't have no closed circuit or pay-per-view crap and everything.
Oh Lord,
but
I hated the pay-per-view era.
But then, the pay-per-view era came around, but I just remember, Sunday, I had to get ready for, I had my whole weekend to do whatever I wanted to, but Sunday, I had to get ready for Sunday night. Everything had to be done, homework, whatever, bath, everything, because it was going to be WrestleMania. And I got to stay up a little bit later. Who would have ever thought back then, you got to have a whole weekend for WrestleMania?
No, it's not a whole weekend. It's a whole week.
Well,
it's
I'm saying, as far as the pay-per-view itself, the premium live event itself.
Well, I mean, they're just their events that they have is a whole week long.
If you go, you got to prepare for a week. It's crazy. Because
so many
it went
things
from
going
being,
on.
okay, it's a one-day event. Now that we're going to do it for a whole weekend. Now it's for an entire week. What, are we going to have WrestleMania a month?
Well, I mean, we've already got this next SummerSlam in August. It's going to be 2 days, 2 nights. It's the first 2-night event.
That's crazy. I mean, that's
SummerSlam
how
event.
popular it's getting again. Is that you've got to have 2 nights because you've got so much talent. You can't, showcase all your talent in one night.
Well, it's mainstream status. I mean,
right.
It's a problem. I mean, it's like a fabric of America, like when you think of America, apple pie, like I kind of think of wrestling goes with it and shit, you know what I'm saying? Fireworks,
as American as it can
wrestlers and stuff, big guys beating the shit out of each other.
Yeah. I just to see from it going from side, these little carnivals and fairs and stuff like that, or backyards or whatever, to it being as big as it is now is just insane to me.
And the money that they're making,
the
money.
money.
I'm pretty sure
money.
before, what I'm saying, like wrestlers, they were getting a decent amount. Of course, the stars made more than others, but now we have guaranteed contracts. You get part of merchandising, which is huge, especially if you're a star. I mean, that's a lot of money there.
That's a lot of money in itself, yeah.
See, that's the thing that I don't understand too, as far as the progression. Kevin Nash and stuff, they take credit for the guaranteed contracts, but
were they the first to get guaranteed contracts?
No, I don't think so.
Who was the first to get a guaranteed
everybody
contract?
that worked for the NWA.
Were they?
Yes, sir. You had a guaranteed amount of money. They would it was like, I want to say, Jim Cornette said that, because he kept all his books from back then, and he said that the Midnight Express were each making a guaranteed $145,000 a year.
Back then, that was good money.
Yeah,
that was great. Yeah, great money.
So I mean, so that's why I don't understand why he, unless he's saying
because Vince wasn't that type of person,
right?
Like when you went to the WWE, I mean, there was no
There was no
guaranteed. Yeah,
guarantees.
exactly. So that's why
Maybe he's saying
that's why like it's such a big deal to them, because when people actually started getting guaranteed contracts before, you wasn't now, like when you were smaller, maybe WCW or like NWA or whatever, then you were getting, you might have guaranteed, but you wasn't getting the same money as you were getting if you were in the WWE/F.
Right, and I think maybe that's what he means, is that we help you all get guaranteed contracts because he had to compete. At that point in time, Vince had no choice.
People.
Yes, he had no choice but to, because at that, what are you going to do? Are you going to sit with a sinking ship, or are you
Vince
going
had trouble
to go,
keeping up with the contracts anyway, being
Right.
able to even pay them.
Right. So what are you going to do? Go with the sinking ship, or are you going to go over here to this company that is run by a billionaire? Mm-hmm. At the time, Vince wasn't a billionaire, but Ted Turner was. So, I'm going to go over here to the billionaire who I know has got the money to pay me that $750,000 that, I signed that contract for. Oh, okay. Well, look at Ted DiBiase. Pretty much the whole time he was in the NWO, he sat at home, got paid the entire time. Like he was brought in to be Eric Bischoff.
Oh, okay.
He was supposed to do the whole Eric Bischoff thing, but then somebody got the bright idea to bring in Eric Bischoff, and it was like, okay, well, we don't need Ted DiBiase, so you just go home, sit, we'll pay you. And then they wonder why the company went under.
Well, I mean, you don't think Vince would have had a little more money if he wasn't, spending it on lawsuits and, hush money, But that's a different story. That's a different story. We'll talk about it another time. I mean,
in the immortal words of Chad Gable, shoosh.
I'm just saying he paid more for that than he did for WCW.
Right.
Guys, we are going to take a break for station identification, and that's code for whatever you want to make up. We'll be back in just a moment. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. We were talking about the progression of wrestling in our lifetimes. So I have a question for you guys. What would you all say, at least in your lifetime, was the one thing that progressed wrestling the most in a positive or negative way? I'll let either one of you start.
Here, you want me to go first? Well, obviously, after it got kind of bland, after the whole Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart era, or whatever.
PG sucked.
I would say the whole Attitude Era, the DX, the Stone Colds, the Rocks that came in. I mean, that was probably one of the biggest turning points, because that's when mainstream media started paying attention to wrestling, because before that, it was just more of, teenagers. It might be a couple grown men, some old guys watching wrestling, but then you had people's wives, you had kids, you had the whole family watching. Everybody was tuning in to see what was Stone Cold going to happen next week, what was going to happen, on Monday Night War. I mean, what was DX going to do and stuff. I mean, like when you watch, DX pull up on WCW, you're like, this is insane. This doesn't really happen and stuff.
Yeah.
Classic thing, to happen and stuff. And that stuff went on the news. There was news reports about that on other on real news channels. Like when they start talking about like it's the number one show like 52 weeks in a row, and it was beating out all the best shows on television. Like no matter what it was, like during the Attitude Era, I mean, wrestling was it. Like everybody watched it. I mean, you come home. I mean, like if you went to work, that's the first thing everybody was talking about. Hey, did you see what Stone Cold did? Like, you see about Goldberg.
Water cooler talk.
DX. I mean, did you see about China? I mean, did you see,
It wasn't about Sunday Night Football anymore all the time. It was, did you see what happened at the pay-per-view?
Yeah.
It was Tuesday morning talk about the wrestling.
Yeah, on Raw, or you couldn't wait till SmackDown, to see what was going to happen next or whatever. So, to me, that was probably what got it probably the mainstream, where everybody, including kids and mom and dad, were watching and stuff, because I don't think anybody didn't know who Stone Cold was. Everybody.
So do you think the Attitude Era was bigger than the Hulkamania era as far as that impact?
I think that they are two of the probably biggest moments in wrestling history as far as to push wrestling to where it is now, because you can't have one without the other. I think Hulkamania was kind of like the blueprint, but I think Austin took it to the next level as
Was the
far as
catalyst,
not
yeah.
being just a regular hero. Because Hogan in the 80s, it was, you know, you knew who the good guys was, like you know who the bad guys was, and Stone Cold was the anti-hero. Like he wasn't necessarily like, I'm going to be the good guy, but I'm going to cuss, drink beer, and kick ass and swear at the same time. And good guys didn't do that back in the day. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Not only that, I don't think people stop and think how short Stone Cold's run was. It wasn't a very long. It was like a 3-4 year run.
Was it really?
Yeah, from where
See,
when he got his neck hurt and everything
the,
because
okay.
of all
the
the time.
injuries or whatever.
Yeah,
So what about you, Gary?
it's fine. I think personally, it would always I always go straight back to the women's, because being a woman myself, you know, it just to see the progression of it, I think is the most significant in my opinion, because back then, like, you didn't have women wrestle. Women were not allowed to wrestle. It was illegal for them to wrestle, and without, you know, Mae Young or the Fabulous Moolah and people like that. I mean, yeah, we had, you know, bad time. It wasn't very good for the women in the Attitude Era, but just to see from then on to now, like the way that it is, I feel like that is one of the most significant pushes that has been through wrestling.
They've really embraced the women now.
They really do. They see them not as like sex symbols. They see
Right.
them as
legit
legit
competitors.
athletes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
They're
And
just as
I mean,
much
they're
of a
just as
competitor.
performative and athletic. And if not, there's some of these women that are brute women, and they can pick up a man 3 times the size of them. I mean, it's incredible how some of these women have progressed throughout,
Oh yeah.
or how the women have progressed throughout history.
Well, just the whole, like we were saying, it's not just get out there and strip each other down to your bra and panties. It's an actual.
Going out there,
We
doing
want
your
you to
best
go out
performance.
there and put the best on because we want you all to be main. I honestly and truthfully, I think it should get to the point to where night 1 of WrestleMania is a women's women's main event. Night 2 of WrestleMania is whatever the second main event. Now you can have a co-main event, night 1 and night 2. Have a co-main event as far as on night 1, have a men's co-main event that go on before the women.
Yeah.
But let the women have that final match.
Well, WWE actually had a pay-per-view at one point in time
Yeah.
that was a women's-only pay-per-view. It was Evolution. It was called Evolution, and I think they did it once, maybe twice, and that was it. And that was a couple of years ago. Like, I think it was pre-COVID.
Okay.
And that's the good thing, too, because I think the women are the reason, at least a big part of the reason. I don't want to say the only reason, because there's just so much talent in wrestling now.
Yeah.
But they're a big part of the reason why these PLEs have had to change to a 2-night format. Is because,
there's so much talent nowadays.
right, because people are demanding to see the women as much as they're demanding to see the men. So you have to put them on to let them perform, and let them see them.
Do you think that they should do more women-only pay-per-views?
Absolutely.
Do you think that that's the future? Like they're going to have, like a standalone where it is just a women's pay-per-view?
I don't. I would like to see it to the point to where when you put on a pay-per-view, there's just as many women's matches as there are men's matches, so we don't have to go down the route of women's and men's. We can just have them all
agree with that,
together.
too.
But I don't have an issue if they do have like a special pay-per-view for
Okay.
just the women. You know what I'm saying? Who cares? Let them have their
I mean,
moment
there's
to shine.
there's
You know,
sometimes on a regular show that there's more women matches than there
Right.
are male matches.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. Men have had premium live events for 40 years.
Yeah. Women
Is it going
just
to be a
started
big
doing it
deal
not
if women
long.
get 1 or 2, throughout the year? just for themselves. That I don't care.
Well, see, that's one of the things when we were talking about the progression before, that would have never been thought of in the 80s.
Right.
Like that would have
Absolutely.
never probably happened in the 90s and stuff. In
the 80s, women were lucky to get like 2 minutes in the ring.
Yeah, absolutely.
You had like 2 minutes to monkey flip each other 5 times, pull each other's hair, and one
And then
barely splash on the other one and pin them.
Yeah.
And most of the time they were just entourage. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
They were the pretty
Filler
chick beside.
matches.
Yeah, the chicks that walk beside.
Valets and
Valet
stuff like
stuff
that.
like that. They were that type of person.
Yep. And that's it. There were so many women back then, especially like Sensational Sherry, that could go in the ring. You know what I mean? Because they did learn how to do all that stuff. Granted, women weren't doing Hurricane Ranas and stuff like that, but not a lot of people were doing stuff like that back then. So, yes, the women's matches were kind of basic, like the men's matches were.
Okay, now that we are talking about women's wrestling, like, what do you think about promotions like WOW? Like the women's only, wrestling league or whatever. Do you think that now, since women's wrestling has got more popular, that that I guess they're going to get their more shine, or they're going to have more people, or is that going to be like a developmental?
No. I hate to say it, but I think like Glow and WOW and
Yeah.
stuff have just gotten that reputation, because I remember Glow whenever I was a kid.
Yeah.
And when I was a kid, it was nothing but, pardon the expression, bimbos in tiny bikinis,
Right.
basically naked, rolling around, calling it wrestling. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It wasn't really anything taken serious, and I think that's the problem. It's gotten that stigma to where
They need to get out of that thing.
right people see the name Glow, and nah, I'm good. That's
You don't think that
that's
they
not WWE product.
You
That's
don't-
not AEW product or TNA. You know what I'm saying?
You don't think that they can rehab their image or change to meet the times or whatever?
Not with the name. There's
You think
too
they have
much
to have a
behind it.
different name?
Yes. I mean, think about it this way: if you've
I don't know, because
I don't wanna
WWE was able
compare
to
it
do
Charlie Manson, but I was going to say Charlie Manson wouldn't be able to change his name, and just be like, "Hey, I'm okay now," And I don't mean to compare it to that, because they're
I
not
don't
like
know. I
out
think they may have a
murdering.
chance. I mean, just because the fact that people look at women's wrestling different now. They don't look at it like they used to.
If they would come out with a legit game plan, you know what I'm saying, and say, "Hey, we're done with what you think Glow is, or WOW, or whatever.
Yeah.
We're done with that. We want to be looked at as serious competition." You know what I'm saying? We're not trying to compete necessarily side by side, but we want to be taken serious.
Do you think that they probably not compete with the WWE or whatever, but do you think that they could move up to be like a TNA or something like that or whatever?
Maybe even OVW.
Yeah, OVW, I would say. Because honestly, like, that's what I almost like
That's
consider
what I
them.
see
Yeah,
it
like
as. It's kind of like in that area.
like a regional wrestling
It
organization.
could be a developmental place.
Developmental,
I
whatever you wanna
could
call it.
see that happening, because yes, the people have to be able to wrestle, to be in the ring. Are they the best wrestlers? I don't know. I've never really watched it enough to critique it like that. But, if they're good enough, then the WWE could send them to the Performance Center and teach them. You know what I'm saying? Anything that they're lacking or whatever. So, I guess there's always the chance. But, like I said, I think that it would take so much work to get out of that stigma of the name you've got already, that it would, and that's why I think it would be, people would be weary of WCW coming back, even though it wouldn't be Turner and them running it and that whole clusterfuck,
Well, I don't think you could call it WCW. I
do.
think that name is, like, when people think about that, like, they have a certain memory, they have a certain, like, nostalgia, and if you tried to put that label on, like, anything else, and people are always going to compare it. Like, you have to have a new, I guess maybe if you say, like, a new WCW or the
Right.
new whatever you want to call it or whatever, and then that might work. But I don't think you can just slap a label on it and be like, hey, this is WCW now, World Championship Wrestling, and this is what we are.
Right.
See, but I do. And I think that enough people want to see WCW. I think I agree. You're gonna have to have a little bit of the nostalgia there, but you're also gonna have to show them that it's not gonna be the same WCW, especially at the end. We can be that Monday Night Nitro WCW that's, that competed with WWE and had those Monday Night Wars. But I see what you're saying too, because it would be a buyer beware situation. Because a lot of people were burned with WCW because they really wanted WCW to stay on the air, succeed. You know what I'm saying?
I think it's like going to your favorite restaurant. You go there, you get the same steak. It tastes delicious. You go there for years, and then next thing you know, they have new owners, and you come in to get that same new steak, and then it just don't taste the same. I don't know if they changed the seasoning or they changed the cook, but it just
something's not right.
Not what you want.
And that could be it too. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, at first they would have good numbers like at first, no matter what, because you have that nostalgia. You have all these people that want to see something like that.
But is it gonna last? You know what I'm saying? I mean, it might last for a week or two, might last for a month, but I think unless you got a good product, people are just not gonna stay because it has a certain name to it.
Right.
I just think I don't know. There's so many things that I think they could do with it if they would do it proper. But like I said, especially
it's all
with
political
Vince,
now.
right? Especially with
gonna say
Vince. Vince in WCW was nothing but political.
Absolutely, and even a lot of the things they still do now are political. I mean, I'm just gonna say it, Logan Paul.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say it. I do not like Logan Paul. I do give him credit for,
He's a lot better than I thought he was going to be.
He is a lot better than
He's
I
a
thought he
beast
was
in
going
the
to be.
ring. I
But
gotta
his
give him credit for
attitude
that.
towards it is just off-putting. But it's like that. I'm just.
But
all
is
of it's
he
a political
doing?
move.
I'm just wondering and I hate to say this because I felt kind of the same way about the Miz when he first started.
I love the Miz.
Oh no, I do too now.
Okay.
I think the Miz is one of the greatest wrestlers of all
Thank
time.
you. I am so glad
And
somebody
it's
else agrees
because
with me.
he's always just went in there and done business.
Absolutely.
He's trained. He was some silly reality star on MTV.
On the Real World, yeah.
Yes, that turned around and said, you know what? I'm going to become a WWF superstar. And then when he got there, he was like, you know what? I'm going to become WWF champion. And he did.
Couple of times.
Right. Well, I mean, one time was like, what, a day or two? It wasn't very long reign. You know what I'm saying? But who cares?
No, but he has held every title in WWE.
He's a Grand Slam champion. He's hosting things. He's probably
He has
got
his own
a
reality
guaranteed
show.
job for the next 20, 30 years of his life.
Absolutely.
When he retires, just because he's a personality, too. I got the biggest respect.
Absolutely.
I really wonder if Logan Paul is not doing the same thing. And the difference is, though, is Logan Paul is just being Logan Paul. And that's his character. It's not Logan Paul, something different from who he is in real life. It's just, I'm Logan Paul.
Well, that shows how wrestling has changed too, because now we have it used to be you'd have to work your way up to the rank, you have to put your time in and all that. Now you can come from any other, say, UFC and become a superstar. You can come from being a weightlifter or like a Olympic gold medal. You can be a reality star
or a
and
cheerleader.
you can be a musician. I mean,
Yeah.
like how many people now,
Right.
Of those have come in and wrestled or
Travis
whatever.
Scott over here busting eardrums.
Screw Travis Scott. I got enough to say about that.
Everybody's like,
But like okay, I think it's more of a respect thing, because like Logan Paul has no respect for the actual business itself. He doesn't have enough respect for, the actual game of it. And like take Bad Bunny though. Bad Bunny, I think, is a totally different story. I think they should bring him back into it. I think he's
Bad
really-
Bunny's in trouble with all this Diddy stuff.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
I
I'm so
think he
sorry.
is. I don't know.
I didn't
don't-
realize
I don't
he
know
was,
the details. or nothing.
I didn't realize he was tied into that. My bad.
And that's a whole nother episode
But-
and a whole nother podcast.
Absolutely. But I mean, I just think it's more of a respect thing than it is.
Because like before, like I said, you'd have to put in your time. You'd have to, but now you can just come from any sport or almost any, and you're going to get a shot now. You might not last, but you're going to get that 15 minutes. You're going to get that little push. Now some last longer than others.
Do you all watch LFG?
I haven't yet.
Uh-uh.
I'm gonna.
I'm
I'm
up
gonna
to
let
date.
it build up and then watch.
It's
the
really
episodes.
good. But you can clearly see where everybody's coming from. You have Elijah Holyfield, which his dad was a professional boxer. You have an Olympic gold medalist. You have football players. You have cheerleaders. You have tumblers. You have, you literally can come from anywhere and just be
Oh yeah.
and train. And they have multiple. They're getting ready to open multiple schools to be able to train now.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
I'm gonna start watching that show. I just
It's really
when I
good.
watch shows like that, I like to let them build up so I can like binge watch.
Well,
and
they're
stuff.
already some of the superstars on there are already showing up on NXT. They're actually
wow.
there's a few of them going to be in a
Damn.
30-man tag match here
Wow.
or a 30-man battle royale or 25. 25 on Tuesday.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So I mean,
Huh, I'll have to check it out.
yeah, it's worth looking into.
So let me ask you this, guys. In closing, what would you say is your biggest moment, single moment, or person, or both, that progressed wrestling the most in your lifetime? I'll let you go first, Miss Vipers.
Okay, so the number one match of my lifetime would have to be the triple threat tag team ladder match between the Hardys,
Hardys.
which Jeff Hardy is my favorite of all time. There's nothing that anybody can say or do anything about that. I love that man. But the Hardys, and then you have Edge and Christian, and then you also have the Dudleys, and that I feel like was one of the most significant in my life because that's what made that match right there is what made me love wrestling. Like yes, Edge and Christian won. It was an amazing match from start to finish. It was everything,
That
and
spear.
that spear was insane.
I didn't want to take it.
The drop was insane. I mean, it just showed what superstars were very capable of doing without killing each other.
Well, no,
Just short of
they had
killing
a
each
good
other.
series of matches too.
Yeah,
Like it was, they had what was it, like 2 or 3 TLC matches
Yeah.
with all three.
all
teams.
three of all three
And it
groups.
was
Yeah.
all of them, like the one in Madison Square Garden where he done the Swanton bomb onto the tables, onto Bubba, I think it was.
Yeah.
I was
Mhm.
just like,
Onto the two tables from the
Yeah,
rafters,
forget
yeah,
all
or
that.
the exit. Yes.
yeah, I was young and could run then, and I still didn't want to do nothing like that. There was nothing about me. I was like, I'm glad I watched this stuff and don't do it.
hmm
That's why they said, don't do it at home.
Right.
Don't
Please
do it
don't,
at home,
try
please.
this at home.
Leave it
Be
to the
safe.
professional.
At least.
So what would you say,
My-
Uncle Slam?
Uncle Slam. Like I can go, like I said, because I'm an '80s baby. I can go, Hogan, Andre. Like if I wanted to, I would probably, I could go Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, or I could go with they just put the Hall of Fame match, the Stone Cold Bret Hart. But if I was really going to choose, I would probably have to go Taker, Mankind,
Absolutely.
Hell in a Cell.
Oh,
I mean, like
wonderful match.
it's a classic. I mean, it
had
like that
everything.
match's been talked about. I mean, like when you think of Hell in a Cell, I mean, that's what you think about.
Mhm.
And when people think about that, they're just
Was
amazed.
there any other Hell in a Cell matches?
I mean, there's been a lot, trust me, but
That's the only one I remember.
Oh,
the only
no.
one that sticks in my head.
I mean, when a
I mean,
man,
I've seen them, but
when a man's knocked out woke back up and then continues to wrestle and then thrown off another, a cage again, you're like,
Onto
oh
a
my
table,
God.
yeah.
Gets knocked out again.
Yeah. And you got a tooth in your nose and
Right.
you're smiling like, hey, this
Yeah,
Gotta
this is
give 'em-
okay.
and thinking the whole time, I still got to give them something.
yeah. So to me, I mean, that always just resonates as far as like when I think of wrestling, like one of the best matches. Like if somebody's never watched wrestling before and I was going to tell them, this is what wrestling is, I would say, go watch this match. And
Don't try this at home.
yeah, of course, give them a warning, but I'll be like, go watch this match. And I think that you will love wrestling.
I could definitely see that. I mean, like I said, it was like you said. I'd never seen anything like that before. Well, like Terry Funk, the Undertaker standing up on the cage asking Funk, "Go check on him, make sure he's okay, make sure he ain't
Make sure
dead."
he's not dead.
Yeah, that
Well, the
got
Taker
me.
didn't want to do it, and Foley was like, come on, do
Come
it.
on,
do
dude,
it.
just
Yeah,
do it.
yeah. And he was like, oh,
Well, he said they
no.
were walking on the cage, and all you could hear was the little fasteners going ting, ting. No, no. Well,
I'm surprised
honestly,
they held their weight. I'm just
oh,
saying.
for real, there was
Just
a
saying,
few
I mean, they're
times
two
I thought it
big
would get,
men.
yes, there was a few times when like Undertaker stepped one time and it sunk. I was like,
Yeah.
oh,
Somebody's going through.
Yep. For me, honestly and truthfully, my lifetime, the one moment, and like you said, there's so many to choose from. But the one moment for me had to be Bash at the Beach. And
NWO.
when Hogan came out,
Oh.
that was probably the biggest swerve I've ever seen in wrestling
Makes sense.
because as a diehard wrestling fan, and at this
Yes.
point I hadn't been watching wrestling in a few years,
Mhm.
because like we were talking about that lull, and I just, I was in my teenage years. I was more worried about running around with girls and doing all that stuff and everything. So, wrestling wasn't the cool thing to do. But I was over at a friend's house, and their dad was watching the pay-per-view, and I seen Hogan come out. Somebody yelled, "Hogan's a bad guy," and I was like, "What?" I was like, "No, what?" So I sat there. I mean, the little kid in me like died right then.
No.
Like my innocence died. I was like, "No more prayers, no more vitamins,
Nope.
no more training." But yeah, for me, and then just. It was a combination of that and just seeing Scott Hall come out and the whole illusion that the WWE was invading, or WWF at the time. Just that whole thing just totally drew me back into wrestling. And to me, that as much as I love Hulk Hogan, as much as he got me into wrestling, like I talked about earlier, that I guess Hogan was a big part of two big influences, as far as wrestling goes, because there he was at the forefront of both. But it was just that NWO thing.
I think that's the first time I saw the crowd actually throw trash and cups and
Yes.
shit
Oh,
into the ring.
man.
I mean, they trashed the whole ring. I mean,
Yeah.
they,
What was it? Mean Gene got hit in the head with a battery.
Oh my
yeah.
goodness.
I mean,
Yeah.
people were like, I
Like,
mean, they felt like
mad.
you. I mean, they felt an emotional attachment. I mean, this is the guy we've always seen. He's always been a good
We
guy. Like, I don't think
believed
he's
it.
ever been a bad
No.
guy. Had he been
Well,
before?
yeah, he was in the AWA when he was Terry Bollea
Yeah.
and all
But
that
since
stuff.
then, like, he's always been the
Well, the Hogan and the WWF, once that whole Hulkamania stuff started, he was a good guy up until the NWO thing.
See, that's
exactly.
what's crazy to me. You're all saying that, because I didn't watch it then. I was not born or a baby, and to hear it like that, it makes me look at what I've seen, and John Cena's career is exactly the same right now.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't realize how parallel they really
Yeah,
are.
Cena
Yeah.
was the
John
modern
Cena
day
has
Hogan.
been
Exactly.
like this baby face for so long, and he's been, the one your kids have looked up to, the one, he's the one that's done the most Make-A-Wish Foundation,
Exactly. Yep. So true.
things, and, and then all of a sudden he's this bad guy. And I remember, I mean, I have my own feelings about John Cena, but to see how like the little kids were so upset. I mean, they were legitimately upset, and I feel like that's how you all felt probably.
It was.
Are they
How-
good feelings or are they tingly feelings? I'm just
No,
joking.
they're not tingly feelings anymore. I promise
She
you
said,
that.
not anymore, man.
No, when I was a kid, when I was 14,
Right.
he was the hottest thing
Right.
in wrestling at the time. That's even before I even knew who Jeff Hardy was.
Right.
But, over the years,
John Cena was on
I
TV
feel like he's
saying,
pushed
you
too
can't
much.
see
I'm
me.
sorry,
And
I
she
feel
said,
like
oh,
he's-
yes, I can.
I feel like he's pushed too much for him not to have been in
Yeah.
wrestling the last little bit. I feel like that it's just too much. I feel like it's an ego boost. I'm sorry, John. But, I mean, I appreciate your career beforehand. I just think now it's just too much.
Sorry, not sorry, but the PG era sucks. I'm sorry, the PG era
Oh,
just
it does.
lost me.
It does. I mean,
I
But
understand.
but I don't blame him. You know what I'm
No, it
saying?
wasn't him.
He took the helm and did what he could do.
Absolutely.
With what he was given to work with by the boss, and the boss said, "This is what we're doing." He went out there and executed it and made himself a lot of money doing it.
Well, the
I don't
boss
blame
owned
you.
his name, like his
Right.
physical
Oh yeah,
government name. So, I
He's-
mean, he had to do what he had to do, and I understand that.
like if I'm not mistaken, Vince still gets a part of his
He does.
Movies and everything.
Mhm.
He said, "Why
Anytime-
shouldn't I give it to him? He's the one that got me to where I get to do this stuff." So
Yeah, I seen an interview with
yeah,
John
that's what he
saying
said.
that.
Yeah. I think we all saw that. Yeah.
He said anytime the name John Cena is mentioned or Cena within that saying, Vince still gets a piece of that.
But the PG era was just more about making herself more commercial to I
More
think,
family
to
friendly.
kids.
Yeah, more family friendly.
Little
That's
kid
when they were
friendly.
like, we're gonna tone it down, because they just come through, the attitude era and
ruthless
the
aggression, and all that stuff.
So it's like, okay, we got to make it, because we're kind of chasing away some of these little kids and stuff like that. So we
Well,
gotta
not
bring it
only
down.
that, but the censors and stuff were putting their thumbs
Oh,
down
yeah.
on them
Oh,
again.
yeah.
So, I mean, Vince was kind of smart because all he did was say, hey, I'm just going to go back to the business model that works. Kids.
He
You know what I'm
adapted
saying?
with the times
Yeah.
or whatever.
I mean,
Right,
if,
and that's what you
if
gotta
they're
do.
gonna- if they're going to make me give them kiddie programs, then I'm going to give them kiddie programs, and I'm going to aim it towards kids, and I'm going to still make some money.
Everything.
But they still also had good people like Randy Orton. They
Oh,
still
yeah.
had like
Yes.
CM Punk and stuff. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? But it just wasn't.
I would have rather
Just what I'm
seen
saying.
Randy Orton in an attitude era, been
Yes,
able to say
yes.
and do what he wanted to.
Like before, because back then he was, he wasn't a legend killer and
Right.
shit. Like he was just, evolution or something like
Right.
that. So.
That
He was a
would've been
baby
good.
then.
Yes.
He was a baby.
And then you had Daniel Bryan or whatever.
Uh,
and yes.
Yes.
I love Daniel Bryan.
Yes.
Brian Danielson.
I'm not a huge fan of him. Like I said, he's all right, and I like his story, but I don't know. I'm just never a huge fan of Daniel Bryan. He's just
Not a big yes movement.
no.
You
He
say
said,
CM
he said,
Punk
no,
and-
no.
So, but
Well, guys, we are at the end of the show. Anybody got anything else to add as far as the progression of wrestling?
I could probably go like another hour or so, but I think I'm going to leave it right here, and then maybe we'll do another show on it, and
Right.
maybe a little more take on it.
And if anybody's got any comments or anything, feel free to leave them under the episode. There should be a place to comment, like it and everything. Let us know, give us some feedback. If you've got any suggestions, we'd like to hear what you all think, were the biggest moments that progressed wrestling, at least for you all in your lifetime. And, don't forget to follow us and, share everything and tell your friends about us. And we hope to see you next time. And next time, I believe we're going to bring you an episode on the greatest factions in wrestling history. Now, that doesn't mean just WWF. That means just the greatest factions that's ever been. So we hope you join us, and we will catch you next time. And until then, I believe that's the 3 count, and we are out.